I've been on record several times with the commission to state that I'm not in favor of spending taxpayer money on any nonprofit per se, because I believe it's when it comes to charity and it comes to nonprofits, that individuals should have a right to determine where their dollars are going to. I was not for this. I was not spending. I mean, and they would say, well, it's only 50 grand to all these organizations. Well, 50 grand is 50 grand. 50 grand is a lot of money to a lot of people around here. It's a lot of money to me. I don't know about you, but to me, I mean, any dollar that's spent has to be accounted for, and we're accountable to the citizens of the county. And regardless of how you feel about the Dawn Center or any organization, so it really doesn't matter. It could be the best nonprofit. It's still the citizens should have a choice of where their dollars go to. If you pay taxes, it's supposed to be for services that you receive as a whole in the county, and I don't think those organizations, including Dawn Center, give services to everyone.
If you think this is unusual, think again. The Department of Justice has prosecuted dozens of grant funding fraud cases in several states, sending many of the accused to prison and forcing them to pay astronomical fines. While conducting my own investigation into the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the Miami Herald reported that FCADV executive Tiffany Carr was paying herself nearly $1 million annual salary on the backs of the taxpayer. The FCADV was the nonprofit organization that managed and dispersed grant funding to all Florida shelters, until Governor Ron DeSantis ordered a criminal investigation and shifted oversight to the Department of Children and Families. But the threat of multi-year prison sentences doesn't seem to deter would-be criminals from taking advantage of a systemically flawed enterprise that all but hands a blank check to administrators with little or no oversight. And as long as you have influential people protecting you from being investigated, like Dawn Center, who is going to blow the whistle? And who is going to listen? One former Dawn Center advocate did blow the whistle and filed a lawsuit, but she settled out of court with a non-disclosure agreement preventing access to details of the case. But the plaintiff, Christine Gimlin, did agree to speak to me about the issues before she retained an attorney.
There's a lot of things that are going on in there that are not legal. There's a lot of funds that are being used for things that they shouldn't be used for. They're paying people out with grant money that are their friends that's work is not being completed. They're supposed to be a domestic violence and sexual assault shelter, and their staff is being sexually assaulted and physically abused. There have been multiple assaults to the staff by participants that are high or on drugs or drunk. There were instances where I had bruises on me. I had somebody's handprint on me. They were made very much aware of what was going on. These people were allowed to stay and continue to terrorize. I don't even know that Shannon knows what goes on in that shelter. She is never there.
So you think there's people that are on the payroll that really aren't even there doing anything?
Yes. And there are so many advocates that are there that really want to help people, that really want to, and they are helping them, but they're being bullied.
Based on what I heard and what she said in front of me and I made accusations, of course he should investigate. If there's any allegations, period, about anything, really, I mean, when there's an allegation about a crime committed, especially with taxpayer dollars, of course the sheriff should investigate. And I would hope he would agree with that. If you asked him, he would say, well, of course I would investigate any kind of crime that's reported to me.
But after hundreds of complaints by former clients, employees, neighborhood residents, and a dozen real news reports, Sheriff Al Nienhuis refused to conduct a single investigation. Not even the serious investigation Detective Galarza claimed would ensue after his interrogation of Ashley Weeder. Maybe it has something to do with Sheriff Nienhuis sitting on the board of directors of Dawn Center, along with Hernando County clerks, current judges, a state representative, and other elected officials who use Dawn Center to springboard their political careers. But how widespread is the corruption, and to what lengths will they go to protect their criminal enterprise? So now that you know some of the players, let me show you how the game is played. Sometimes the person you least expect to be in charge of a criminal operation is often hiding in plain sight. Hernando County Clerk Doug Corvat is well liked by people who know him, but what they don't know is that he actually allows Dawn Center to control every aspect of court operations, including how a judge rules in criminal and civil domestic violence cases. And here's how it works. County Clerk Doug Corvat deputizes dozens of Dawn Center advocates who then become paid county employees. The clerk provides the private cell phone numbers of all county and Fifth Circuit judges. Then, the deputized Dawn Center clerks encourage women to lie on petitions for domestic violence injunctions. But hold on. You're probably thinking, no one would ever perjure themselves just to gain an advantage in divorce or child custody cases, right?
And if Biden's domestic violence law passes, women will use this as leverage in divorce cases. Bizarre.
The protective order carries criminal consequences. Accordingly, that's a pretty heavy tool in negotiating a divorce. To do the protective order as part of your case, it gives you more leverage in negotiating a settlement. And again, if you're doing a divorce and you can prove up a temporary ex parte protective order, that gives you a lot of leverage if all of a sudden they were having access to the house, the kids, the property, and all of a sudden there's a tax bill in place. Then all of a sudden you're bringing them to the table a lot faster. You can use to get a protective order, or use as a bargaining chip in your divorce. Bargaining chip in your divorce. Bargaining chip in your divorce.
And if that isn't enough, judges from all 20 Florida judicial circuits admit that the injunction process is seriously flawed. And petitioners often use injunctions to gain an advantage in divorce or child custody disputes. One Florida judge estimates that up to 40% of his cases had no merit at all. Another group suggests 81% of all petitions are either unnecessary or false. Experts say misuse of the injunction process wastes precious resources and hurts true victims of domestic violence. Now, where were we? Oh yeah. After that, the clerks contact judges on their private cell phones to discuss any civil or criminal case, which is a clear violation of Florida's Judicial Code of Conduct. This sinister scheme allows Dawn Center to qualify for grant funding by keeping domestic violence statistics high, and it secures a seat on the bench for any judge who plays along. And let's take a closer look at each judge. Judge Kurt Hitzman used to sit on the Dawn Center Board of Directors until I exposed the conflict to the community. He quickly resigned from the board, but still presides over domestic-related cases. Former Clerk of Court Don Barbie also sat on Dawn Center's board, and he's now a Hernando County judge. Former Hogan Law Firm attorney George Angelitis used to be Dawn Center's attorney and was subsequently appointed as a circuit judge until he recently was voted off the bench. After uncovering this blatant conflict, I thought maybe this is going on around the state. But was I wrong? I contacted the clerks of every county in Florida, and not a single one deputizes civilians. And under no circumstance do they hand out the personal phone numbers of every judge. None of them engage in the same nefarious gender-driven political scheme with a nonprofit like the Fifth Circuit and Hernando County.
So you're telling me this for the first time, so I don't know that. And I know a lot of the judges, and I respect them. I think they do a good job. I mean, some better than others, I get it. Yeah. I mean, I've openly supported some, and politically too, even giving money to their campaigns. I think they're important. Law enforcement is important, the judges are important, but of course they shouldn't be biased. I think that's something we could talk to the clerk's office about, and hopefully Doug will talk to you, or you try to, and say, should you be doing this? And to be honest with you, you just made me aware. I'll talk to him.
Yeah, please.
And I'll ask, and I'll say, hey, should we be doing this?
I need to speak with Doug.
Was on his way to the courthouse.
Is Doug available?
No, he's not. I think he was at our Spring Hill office today.
Oh, he is? Okay.
I tried several times to speak with Doug Corvat, judges, and Fifth Circuit officials about their incredulous business arrangement with Dawn Center, but the gatekeepers weren't having any of that truth and transparency nonsense. After 10 years of reporting news from inside the Hernando County Government Center, I was suddenly banned from bringing cameras into the facility and given a stern warning by Fifth Circuit General Counsel Roy Wolgamuth that if I continued asking questions, I would be subject to arrest. Every well-organized criminal enterprise has a hierarchy of individuals who have a specific skill set. Dawn Center is part of what is considered a clustered hierarchy, where they operate autonomously but under the protection of ranking members. Not many would risk everything to expose a dangerous criminal operation like Dawn Center, but I did, and I paid dearly. Over the course of my multi-year investigation, I endured slander campaigns, bribery attempts, intimidation, threats, and I eventually lost my news website to a fraudulent business deal with individuals who were colluding with Sheriff Nienhuis. During an interview with Nienhuis at the scene of an attempted homicide, he took the opportunity to chastise me for my style of reporting.
I want to tell you I'm a little disappointed in your style. Yeah, I think you're getting some misinformation. It's very inflammatory, and frankly, it's beneath you as a professional journalist. I think you need to be a little more neutral when you ask those questions. Are you recording now?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I didn't plan on being on the record. If you could stop it, I want to talk to you.
Soon after that meeting, I was attacked inside a local nightclub by several women who also didn't like the style of my reporting. And despite clear exculpatory video evidence that I was not the aggressor, and a statement from bar owner Rob Stars that I never touched anyone, Sheriff Nienhuis jumped at the opportunity to send one of his Dawn Center Gestapo thugs, Deputy Michael Renskowski, to arrest me. Why Deputy Renskowski? Because his aunt is a former Dawn Center board president. Now, prior to that arrest, Sheriff Nienhuis teamed up with several women who filed false reports in an attempt to have me arrested. Former Dawn Center Administrator April Johnson, who led the slander campaign against me for several years, filed a report alleging that I stalked and threatened her. The only problem is, I've never met April Johnson, nor have I ever had a conversation with her. When detectives asked her to provide proof, she was never able to provide that evidence. Now, on or about the same day, two other women known to Sheriff Nienhuis and Dawn Center filed almost identical complaints. But just like with April Johnson, I had neither met nor spoken with either woman in my entire life. Thanks to a certain honest deputy, I was tipped off about the nefarious scheme before I was formally notified of the investigations. I quickly filed my own complaint after Sergeant Brandon Cox and a second deputy suggested that Sheriff Nienhuis was victim shopping, which means to have someone file fraudulent complaints against an innocent person.
Do you think the sheriff is victim shopping?
I was Sergeant Brandon Cox. I didn't understand why it was being handled the way it was.
Do you think he is orchestrating these in some way or has some part in this?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure he's, even though he's not CC'd on my emails, I don't have any doubts.
And if the FDLE agent asked, hey, do you think we should investigate the sheriff? What would you say?
Yes. There's things I don't agree with that don't add up, don't make sense to me.
Now, all three investigations were immediately abandoned after detectives discovered they had provided false information in sworn written statements. Detectives even suggested there were grounds for arrest, but once in the hand of the state attorney, they quickly dismissed all three cases and declined to prosecute. Note to self: lying to law enforcement in an effort to have someone falsely arrested isn't illegal in Hernando County. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement pretended to conduct an investigation, but they didn't even bother speaking with the deputies who testified that Sheriff Nienhuis was victim shopping. Under the guise of an investment proposal, State Representative Blaise Ngolia offered to give me up to $250,000 if I just stopped writing news about Dawn Center and Sheriff Nienhuis. He even sent one of his goons, Samuel McCall, to threaten me if I didn't sell my business to him. When all else failed, the mob orchestrated a foolproof plan to steal my business and make sure I was completely canceled. Thomas Barnett is a longtime political lobbyist who has helped candidates like Commissioners Wayne Dukes and accused sex trafficker Nick Nicholson win local elections. Barnett teamed up with Fort Myers State Farm agent Ray Hare to invest into my business. I had no idea Ray Hare was conspiring with Sheriff Nienhuis behind the scenes to develop another false attempt at my arrest. And it worked. You can read the details of that case in my book, Victim Shopping 101.
Contact 5 Palm Beach Post joint investigation into the Department of Children and Families uncovered deep-rooted problems.
Did I break the rules? Yeah, I broke the rules. Why did I do it? I did it because I wanted to keep my job.
The people that really care about the families are few and far between.
Florida's Department of Children and Families is always under fire for allowing children to be abused or even die under their care, while taking children away from average families who are easy targets. And guess which agency was directed to manage all Florida domestic violence shelters after fraud was discovered inside the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence? That's right, DCF. And they even hired over 30 former employees from the duplicitous nonprofit. Over the course of my investigation, I've made numerous public records requests to DCF to try and pinpoint the core problem in Florida, and they've done everything possible to stonewall access to those records. But that all changed just days before the release of this film. Convenient. You see, DCF has ignored hundreds of reports to Dawn Center, including 3 abuse reports of my own. Records show DCF attorneys and other top brass discussing how they can avoid turning my complaints over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which we already know is also involved in protecting Sheriff Al Nienhuis. When I asked DCF to explain their inaction, they began an illicit taxpayer-funded investigation into my private life in an effort to assist Dawn Center with their defamation lawsuit against me. And isn't it ironic that the Department of Children and Families motto is enhancing public trust in government?
I know people are going to say, well, if it was this bad, why didn't I say anything 3 years ago? That was the most selfish mistake that I made, and I paid dearly for it.
So no one should have to live like that. No one needs to be threatened that way. He's never once made me feel uncomfortable, like other women have met him and then they're not uncomfortable. I think it's just people out to get him who are trying to tarnish his name.
Did you know who I was during the time that you were there?
It was part of the training because they're not, the women that work there, their hearts aren't pure. And the only thing that they're pure about is the money they get, and pure about making men pay for the shit that they feel as though they need to pay for.
In an effort to stop the release of this film, Dawn Center and their attorneys with the Hogan Law Firm filed a frivolous lawsuit claiming my reports were libelous. And who do you think will be presiding over that case and the criminal charges? The same judges who are loyal to a fraudulent ideology and their master, Dawn Center. What is the ultimate goal? It's to cancel out anyone who questions the grand scheme of the domestic violence industry, divide families, and use identity politics to further their political careers.
But the whole concept, the whole argument that all women are innocent victims of male's brutality and oppression because of the patriarchy, it makes actually no sane sense at all. And then the fight to destroy marriage, and then behind it all was always the idea to destroy men. I can't think of a time in history when the women in the Western world en masse turned against men and fathers from the very beginning, to the idea that marriage was a dangerous place for women and children. This was said publicly, and what happened after that, the new family would be women and children with no men.
Am I afraid of showing my face on this video? Yes. I'm not only afraid for my own safety, I'm afraid of my friends being harassed because they're friends with me.
Since the release of my documentary, Florida lawmakers panicked and immediately proposed legislation that would force the removal of my film from public view. On behalf of Dawn Center Director Shannon Sokolowski, Florida Senator Ileana Garcia submitted legislation that would force me to remove my film or face criminal charges and imprisonment. That's right. For the first time in American history, lawmakers subverted the U.S. Constitution for the sole purpose of protecting a criminal enterprise, an egregious violation of civil and constitutional rights. Senate Bills 68 and 70 become law on July 1st, 2021, making it a criminal offense to disseminate images of a domestic violence shelter or divulge the identities of domestic violence shelter employees, both past and present. It's not coincidental that my film contains both elements. So instead of state and federal agencies investigating the numerous crimes alleged by victims, employees, and nearby residents, the political mafia created laws to end all future investigations before they even begin. Essentially, the state of Florida becomes the first state to sanction human trafficking, prostitution, federal fraud, drug trafficking, child abuse, and other potential crimes committed on or around domestic violence shelters. In addition to the legislative attack on my First Amendment rights, the Department of Children and Families has engaged in a year-long effort to destroy what's left of my reputation and withhold public records. I recently received several documents from DCF that shows top officials conspiring with Shannon Sokolowski to fabricate fake criminal records asserting I was arrested in 2016 for child abuse. I assure you, no such arrest ever occurred. Just ask my children. These documents were supplied by DCF attorneys to Shannon Sokolowski to be used in her current lawsuit against me. A waste of taxpayer dollars and an abuse of power like nothing I've ever seen. Because of current false charges, I may not be around much longer to defend my rights or to be a voice for thousands of victims. So please, share this video and my documentary with as many people as you can before it's too late. Thank you.